Hi, this is Tom Soane, and I've just seen a question from Deon, and I thought this is a really good question to ask publicly and answer publicly because it's a good problem to have, but a problem that needs a bit of advice. So, Deon has said, and you know what, I'll just read it actually. So Deon has said, what advice would you give me? I am looking to invest around £25,000 into property. I can do more if needed, but that's the figure I'm happy to invest. I'm currently unemployed as I've been travelling in Asia for 6 months before coming back due to COVID. Will I still be able to get a mortgage? Which company is best for me? And which route should I go down to invest in property? Any advice you can give would be welcome and much appreciated. Well, thanks for the question, Deon, and I hope you get to see this as well as my answer. I see two sides to the question. Question number one was, what should I do? I've got 25 grand to invest. How shall I invest it? Question number two is about your employment status. Are you eligible for a mortgage, and who can I use if you are eligible for a mortgage? So let's tackle number one, which is what can you do if you've got 25 grand to invest in properties? Now, I've figured out three main options. There are about 6 options, 5 or 6 options, but the three main ones are going to be as followed. Option number one, a straight out buy-to-let, single-let property or a HMO, but a standard buy-to-let property. Now, with 25 grand, that's going to buy you a property somewhere in the region of about £90,000 purchase price. Why? Because you'll have fees, you'll have stamp duty, legal costs, surveyor costs, you might even have auction costs, anything like that. But I would estimate somewhere around £90,000 as a purchase price with a deposit of about 25 grand to invest, with an amount of 25 grand to invest. That will give you a mortgage of about 67 grand, and that's going to cost you, look, I don't know the exact figures here, but you'll be paying about £300 a month in mortgage payments, probably including insurance too. Now, once you've got that mortgage of 67,000 with £300 a month payments, you'll have an equity in that property of 23 grand. And the rent income, depending on where you buy and what you buy, but let's just say it's £650 a month rent income. Nice, not bad at all. Once you've paid your mortgage, your profit is going to be about £4,000 a year. There or thereabouts. I mean, these are just rough figures. £4,000 a year net profit against a equity investment of 23 grand works out to be 17% as a yield. Plus growth, of course, plus appreciation. So that's pretty good. Hey, you'd take that all day long. Now, where can you buy properties like that? You'll need to look up in the northeast, northwest, that sort of area. That's a good price property with not bad rental returns. There are other areas. I won't list all the areas actually. But, you know, if you are looking in the northeast, northwest, talk to Kirsty Clifford at Kern Estates over in the northwest. Have a chat with Tony Fairs of Fairs Estates over in the northeast. They're two really good contacts that you should get to know. Anyway, now the problems with investing up in the north are that there's slightly slower growth, but you get a good return on investment. 17% yield, awesome. Option number two is a flip to let. So it's like a flip to sell, but you're going to buy it, you're going to do it up, you're going to refinance it, and then you're going to rent it. It's also known as a BRRR, or as I'm calling it, a BRRR. That's the funniest way to do it I can think of. Anyway, it's a buy, refurbish, refinance, rent. BRRR. Remember that one. Now, in that instance, you need to save a little bit money for the refurb. So you probably put 15 grand down as a deposit. That will get you a property purchase of 60 grand, there or thereabouts. And once you've done a 10 grand refurbishment on that property, you've increased the value, hopefully, to about 100 grand. As a job done value, once the refurb is done, the value of that property is now 100 grand. It might be more, but hopefully that will be a good figure for you to work from. When you refinance or remortgage that property, you'll then have a 75 grand mortgage, which is going to cost you about $320 a month, there or thereabouts. It might be more, might be less, but there or thereabouts. Now, because you've got a slightly better property and it's all brand new, hopefully you can rent that out for about $700 a month. That's going to give you profits once you've paid your mortgage of £4,500 a year. Now, your net profit of £4,500 a year against your equity investment of £25,000 is going to give you an 18% yield plus growth. Now, if you remember, if you just buy an outright buy to let and you can get a good deal, then you're going to have about 17%, maybe slightly less. If you do a flip to let, you're going to have an 18% yield. Nice one. But you're also going to have a nice new property. And that's the most fun. I love a flip to let. When you buy a place, you refurbish it, you refinance it, and you rent it out. I love those. They're really good. I also love a good flip to sell. Now, you might decide to do that as well, Deon. Option number 3 is to do a flip to sell, which is similar to the flip to let, but where you've left a nice little bit of equity in there, you might be able to make 10 grand profit on it. So you do the same thing, you buy it, you refurbish it, but you sell it. That might give you a little profit. So all of a sudden your 25 grand turns into 35 grand, and then you can buy a better investment property if you want a rental that's going to give you more yield. Or you can have more money to do it again. You might decide to turn your 35 grand into 55 grand, and then your 55 grand into 80 grand, and then your 80 grand into 120 grand, and so on and so on and so on and so on. You might decide to do that. You might decide to just keep buying rental properties. Option number 4 is a joint venture. So we're kind of getting into a technical part here. So you've got 25 grand to spend, and let's say I've got 25 grand to spend. And if we can put down 50 grand between us, we're going to make a lot more profit because we can get a bigger, better property. Then hey, let's do that. I'm sure you must know someone who's got 25 grand as well. If you don't, then there's a couple of ways that you can find deal sources, deal packages, investors. Just look through the Facebook groups, put a message out there saying, hey, I've got a joint venture opportunity. Does anyone want to join me? These are the numbers. This is the property. Don't give it away though. Don't let other people know the exact details. You can tell them that it's a 3-bed house. We're going to buy it for 100 grand. Once we've done it, it's going to be worth 200 grand, blah, 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 blah. So that's option 4, do a joint venture. Now there's a little addition to option 4. If you do find someone that you can do a joint venture with, you might also build a relationship for the future. You get this deal done, you get this investment done as a joint venture, you make a bit of profit together, and you might say, hey, let's go and do another one, shall we? Hell yeah, let's do another one. So you might go and find the next one. And now you've got an investment partner. Awesome. Doors open when there are more of you doing it together. And you know, it doesn't have to be long term. You might get to a point where you've done enough with this person, you feel like you want to now do them on your own. That's fine. But you can do bigger deals, more profits, and you can build a relationship, and that will get you started with your 25 grand. There are a couple of other options. You can start going after rent to rents and rent to serviced accommodation, or even lease purchase options, which is where you agree to rent the property from a person at a certain price, and also agree a purchase option. I won't go into them now. I've done a whole other thing on lease and purchase options, but you might decide to go that route, which will help you spread your 25 grand across loads of properties. And hey, I did a podcast actually on my Anonymous Landlord podcast about how much money investors make on each of those options. So it might be good for you to have a little look at that too. Just go onto Apple or Spotify or whatever, search for the Anonymous Landlord, it will be on there. Anyway, back to the point. Now, so those are some options for you to be able to invest your 25,000. Now, what restrictions do you have? Well, I'm sorry to say that there are going to be a couple, but it's not impossible. Because first of all, I don't know whether you've got experience as an investor. If you have, and you've got other properties that you have rented out, then mortgage lenders will look at that favourably. And yes, they will lend if they can see you've got a portfolio of properties that you've managed fine and paid the mortgage and got the rent in, no problems. So that's one good thing. So I don't know whether you've got experience as a landlord or not. If you have, that is good. If you haven't, then your employment will be a problem, but not for all mortgage lenders. Now, of course, I could give you the generic advice of speak to a mortgage advisor and they'll tell you, yes, that is good advice. You do need to speak to a proper mortgage advisor. Try and find a mortgage advisor that specialises in property investments, buy-to-lets, that sort of stuff, rather than just your generic mortgage advisor who's used to doing first-time buyers and so on. I'm not saying they're no good, but if you speak to a mortgage advisor whose focus is on buy-to-let properties and property investments, they will be probably more experienced to advise you properly. Now remember that the lender wants security. Obviously, they want to know that if the rent doesn't come in, you can still afford that mortgage payment. That's all they need to know. So that's what they'll be looking for. So if you are in the process of getting a job, then of course that's going to help you. If you're not and you've got enough money to sit back on and wait, or you're doing this because you just want to go all out into property, then there are going to be less lenders that will lend to you, but they will lend to you if the property deal is really good. If there's a really high rent income, low purchase price, they will still lend to you. So what they'll do 9 times out of 10 in those instances is that deal will go to their underwriters. So they make a human decision and look at all of the details, all the evidence, all of the information, and decide whether it's a risk-free or low risk, or it's a risk they're prepared to take. The best part I can tell you about all of that is that it's free to find out. And I'm really sorry to the other mortgage advisors that are doing applications. I feel your pain. They're doing applications for people that aren't actually going anywhere with them, or they're doing decisions in principle, left, right and centre. But speak to a good mortgage advisor, because it is free to get a decision in principle. If you can get that, that's step 1. So in order, I would say, yes, you can invest your 25 grand in property. There are restrictions on who you can borrow money from. But speak to a mortgage advisor, of course, about the mortgage route, but make sure you do it with a specialist buy-to-let investor. Hey, do you know what? Actually, if you want me to connect you with mine, I'm more than happy. Just drop me an email, tom@pinkstreet.co.uk, or a message on Facebook, whichever you want, mate. Anyway, the last thing I wanted to say is that you can also find private investors, where you've got 25. Now, I mentioned joint ventures earlier on, but this isn't joint ventures really. Let's say you're going to buy a place for 100 grand. You've got 25 grand. There are private investors that will lend you the other 75,000 for something like 10% per year interest. Things to remember is that a lot of those types of lenders will have a minimum interest amount. So they might say, I'll lend you the 75 grand at 10% per year, but I want a minimum of 6 months interest. And that's cool, that's fine. You can build that into your calculation of the property investment. So there's a few tips for you there. Hope that helps. Option 1, get a straight out buy to let. Option 2, get a flip to let. Option 3, do a flip to sell. Build up your cash pot and then reuse it. Option 4 is a joint venture. You can also do a rent to rent, rent to service accommodation, or lease purchase options. And to answer the final question, yes, you can technically borrow a mortgage. It will go to the underwriters. There are going to be restrictions. They will either want to see experience as a landlord or an investor. They will want to see some sort of income or some sort of security or safety for their money, for their mortgage payments. That's all they want. Can the rent be covered? Can the mortgage payment be covered by the rent? If not, can the borrower cover the mortgage payment too? So if you can provide evidence to that, I don't think you'll have too much difficulty getting a mortgage if you've got the right deal. But obviously a mortgage advisor will be able to tell you that for free. And I'm sorry, mortgage advisor, you shouldn't really be working for free. It's a criminal world the way we're treated. Well, I'm not a mortgage advisor, but the way you're treated, giving out free information is criminal. But that's the way it is, and we've got to do what we've got to do. So Deon, I hope that helps. Good luck to you, mate. If you want some further advice or help with investing on your property, drop me a message. I'm happy to help. And see where I can steer you or direct you. Anyway, My name's Tom Soane, and I think this is going to be a podcast as well, because there are so many people in a similar position to you, Deon, that could do with a bit of steering in the right direction, a bit of guidance on where best to invest that sort of money. So then I guess I'm going to say, hey, if you want to be the best version of yourself at one thing, you've got to be the best version of yourself at everything. And that means don't just develop yourself at this one tiny little thing. Develop yourself as a whole. And that one little thing will become easier. My name is Tom Soane, and this is the Anonymous Landlord.